Isn't it surprising that we don't hear much about backstage fights between wrestlers, given how quickly news spreads? Despite their physical strength and on-screen rivalries, wrestlers usually behave off-camera and rarely resort to physical violence. However, we are looking at 10 rare instances where things did get physical. These wrestlers have entertained us for decades, but behind the curtains, some of them have also been involved in unscripted fights. In the 1990s, Vince McMahon was known as a tough boss. In 2010, John Cena, Kofi Kingston, and Chris Jericho were invited to travel on McMahon's private jet to a press conference for WrestleMania 26 in Nashville, Tennessee. Well, according to Chris Jericho, everyone in the flight got drunk on free Jack Daniels whiskey. When they landed, they were pretty drunk and the joking and teasing were flowing. McMahon even made a comment about Kingston, saying maybe he'll get popular someday. Kingston didn't react, but Jericho knew McMahon was testing him to see if he'd stand up for himself. As they exited the plane, McMahon kept trying to get a rise out of Kingston, asking if he was going to fight an old man. Kingston showed incredible bravery and stood up to McMahon, asking if he had a problem with him. The two went back and forth verbally until McMahon got physical and tried to wrestle Kingston to the ground. They wrestled for a few minutes before McMahon broke the hold and walked away laughing. And years later, Kingston said he and McMahon always had a great relationship. But who knows how McMahon would have treated him if he hadn't stood up for himself that day. By standing up for himself, Kingston showed he wasn't afraid of the boss, and that might have earned him some respect. JBL was known for being a bully and would often get drunk and pick on smaller WWE superstars and employees. During a 2008 trip to perform for the troops, JBL constantly harassed Joey Styles, doing several things to annoy him. Eventually, Styles snapped and confronted JBL, who was drunk and tried to charge at him. Styles punched JBL in the face, knocking him out and leaving him with a black eye. JBL was quiet and alone in the locker room that night and soon left WWE due to a back injury. When he returned a few years later, he was a changed person, and some credit Joey Styles for teaching him a lesson. JBL's behavior was unacceptable, and Styles stood up for himself. The incident itself might have been a wake-up call for JBL, leading him to change his ways and become a better person. Now, imagine a match between two giant wrestlers, Big Show and Great Khali, both over 7 feet tall. Despite being friendly, they surprisingly got into a fight. During a tag team match, Khali copied Big Show's signature chest chop move, which didn't sit well with Big Show. Backstage, Big Show confronted Khali, leading to a physical altercation. Big Show threw the first punch, but Khali fought back, and the situation escalated into a brawl. Big Show tripped over a chair, and Khali pinned him to the ground. The next night, Vince McMahon made Big Show apologize for throwing the first punch. In a later interview, Khali claimed that Big Show was left crying in a corner after their confrontation. The tag team of Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, known as the Rockers, brought excitement to the WWE tag team scene. Despite their popularity, they never held the tag team championship, which is a shame.
Kicked his own partner right in the face.
In 1991, Michaels shocked fans by turning against Jannetty, throwing him through a barbershop window. What fans didn't know was that the two had been feuding in real life for months, and their 6-year friendship had ended. A violent fight broke out between them at a hotel, and police were called. The exact reason for the fight is unknown, but rumors say Roddy Piper stirred up trouble between them. Randy Savage arrived at the hotel and convinced the police that the two were just practicing their wrestling moves. Amazingly, the police believed him, and Michaels and Jannetty were let go after Savage signed autographs for them. After the fight, the Rockers' relationship deteriorated further, with Michaels threatening to quit. Luckily, he didn't, but this marked the beginning of his bad behavior. In 2002, a wild fight broke out between Curt Hennig, also known as Mr. Perfect, and Brock Lesnar on a plane ride from hell. The WWE roster was flying back from a European tour, and many wrestlers were drunk and high on drugs. Hennig, a known prankster, challenged Lesnar to an amateur wrestling match on the plane. Lesnar, still new to WWE, was hesitant, but was egged on by other wrestlers who didn't want him to be labeled a coward. The two men, both from Minnesota and experienced amateur wrestlers, wrestled on the plane, with Lesnar taking Hennig down multiple times. Jerry Lawler, who witnessed the fight, said the men were ramming into the emergency door, making everyone in the flight nervous. This incident was just one of many problems on that chaotic flight, which led to wrestlers being fired and lawsuits being filed. The incident also changed how WWE transported its wrestlers from then on. Fast forward 14 years and Brock Lesnar had become an even more intimidating force in wrestling. It's hard to understand why anyone would want to confront him in real life. Lesnar's reputation as a formidable wrestler and his intense persona made him someone to be reckoned with. The plane ride from hell was just one of many stories that added to his legend. In the mid-2000s, a sensitive situation unfolded backstage in WWE. John Morrison's girlfriend, Melina, was also involved with Dave Bautista, which upset Morrison. The other wrestlers decided to address the issue through wrestler's court, a concept they created to resolve problems and get issues out in the open. The Undertaker usually acted as the judge. The Booker T was part of the prosecution team alongside JBL. During the court session, Melina faced harsh criticism and burst into tears within 10 minutes. Batista wasn't present, but heard about the incident and was upset. Booker T didn't care, as Batista had become arrogant and disrespectful towards other wrestlers. This behavior had been building up for a while, and the tension finally boiled over. Nevertheless, a few weeks later, the wrestlers gathered at a California mansion to shoot an ad campaign for SummerSlam. Booker T recalled being in the pool when Batista arrived, causing tension. Booker T confronted Batista, saying they needed to work together despite their differences. He warned Batista that if he crossed him, he'd have to deal with his fists. The confrontation escalated into a physical fight, which Booker T claimed he won. Later, Batista acknowledged that the issue had been brewing for a long time and suggested they put it behind them and work together despite their disagreements. Although they wouldn't be friends, they needed to collaborate as professionals. A long-standing feud between Chris Jericho and Goldberg finally erupted in 2003. The tension began in 1998 when Goldberg, the face of WCW, refused to work with Jericho, considering him a comedy act. Despite Jericho's TV appearances calling out Goldberg, he was ignored. Jericho made a smart move by leaving WCW for WWE, thinking he'd never see Goldberg again. However, 5 years later, WWE signed Goldberg to a multi-million-dollar contract, putting him in the same locker room as Jericho. Jericho discovered that Goldberg had been talking behind his back, saying he was too small to be a main eventer. By the way, some speculate that Kevin Nash might have been causing trouble by spreading rumors. Jericho confronted Goldberg, leading to a heated exchange. Goldberg accused Jericho of criticizing him in online interviews and grabbed him by the throat. Jericho responded by taking Goldberg down and putting him in a front face lock, showcasing his shoot submission skills learned in Japan. The altercation ended with Goldberg pushing Jericho through a locker room door into a crowd of fans. Despite this, Jericho and Goldberg eventually developed a working relationship. At SummerSlam 2016, Chris Jericho confronted Brock Lesnar, who had just won the match against Randy Orton. Lesnar had used a bloody elbow strike to finish the match, but Jericho didn't know it was planned. Blood was banned at the time, and Jericho thought Lesnar had gone too far. The two men had to be separated twice that night, first by Triple H and then by Vince McMahon. Despite being concussed, Randy Orton told Jericho that the bloody finish was actually part of the plan. Jericho didn't realize it, but Lesnar's actions were all part of the show. When WWE bought WCW in 2001, Buff Bagwell and Shane Helms were among the lucky ones whose contracts were retained by WWE. However, not all former WCW wrestlers adapted well to their new workplace. Well, Bagwell had a reputation for being arrogant and mouthy, and this continued in WWE. During a training session, he taunted Helms, saying he'd never make it as a WWE superstar due to his height and lack of muscle definition. At this point, Helms had enough and threw a bottle of frozen water at Bagwell, cutting his head open. Helms then punched Bagwell repeatedly, trying to knock him out. This incident didn't help Bagwell's already precarious situation with WWE officials, who were already upset with him for skipping work that week. His mother had even called WWE headquarters to excuse his absence, which didn't go over well. In October 1993, WCW was on a grueling tour of Europe, and the first night in Blackburn, England would become infamous. After a long journey, some wrestlers were drinking in the hotel bar and initially in good spirits. However, Arn Anderson overheard Sid Vicious insulting Ric Flair, his close friend and fellow Four Horsemen member. Anderson defended Flair, and the situation escalated. Beers were thrown, and Anderson threatened Vicious with a bottle. The fight seemed to end, but Vicious wasn't done. He broke a chair leg and attacked Anderson in his hotel room, sparking a violent brawl. Anderson tried to defend himself with scissors, but Vicious grabbed him and stabbed him 20 to 30 times, causing a massive amount of blood to pour out. Luckily, Vicious missed any major arteries or organs. The men eventually forgave each other, but Anderson still doesn't like to talk about it. When they returned to the US, Vicious was fired by WCW. This incident remains one of the most notorious fights in wrestling history. That's it for today's video on WWE wrestlers who got into real backstage fights you never knew about. From bitter rivalries to explosive confrontations, these stories show that even the toughest wrestlers have their limits. While the drama and action in the ring are what we love, is the real-life conflicts that remind us that these athletes are human too. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more wrestling content. Join us next time as we explore more untold stories from the world of WWE.